Welcome to Inside East African Politics. We're diving deep today into something really fascinating happening right in the heart of Africa.
Yeah, it's a big one.
It's a story about coffee, yeah, but also about economic shifts, power dynamics, and maybe some surprising turns. For decades, you thought African coffee, you probably thought of one place mainly.
Ethiopia, usually.
Exactly. But recent news is showing that map is definitely being redrawn.
It's a really compelling shift, honestly. We're seeing this dynamic change in the whole coffee landscape, and the ripples go way beyond just, regional trade figures.
Right.
This isn't only about beans. It's wrapped up in national strategies, farmers' lives, millions of them, and these big global market forces.
That's it. So our mission today really is to unpack this. We want to explore Uganda's, frankly, amazing rise in the coffee world. And then look at Ethiopia, its enduring role, sure, but also the challenges it's facing. And then try and figure out what it all means for them, for the continent, and maybe even for that cup of coffee you might be drinking right now.
Let's get into it.
Okay, so the big news first. Back in June 2025, Uganda's Ministry of Agriculture dropped a pretty major announcement.
Yeah, that caught everyone's attention.
Uganda is now officially Africa's top coffee exporter. And this isn't like just edging ahead slightly. This is a big deal, overtaking Ethiopia, the longtime leader.
It is. And what's fascinating here is the sheer scale of it. The numbers are just wow.
Tell us about the volume.
Okay, so just in May 2025, 1 month, Uganda shipped out almost 800,000 bags. These are the standard 60-kilo bags. That's, about 47,600 tons?
Almost 800,000 in a month.
Yeah, and that put them comfortably ahead of Ethiopia for that same month. But here's the really eye-popping part. That number was a massive 43.6% jump compared to Uganda's exports just 1 year earlier, May 2024.
33% in 1 year.
43.6, and the revenue for that month alone, nearly $250 million US, just from coffee.
That's incredible. Just an incredible leap. So looking bigger picture then, the full year leading up to that, June 24 to May 25.
Right. Over that 12-month period, Uganda shipped 7.43 million bags. That's about 443,000 tons.
Wow.
Bringing in over $2 billion, USD 2.09 billion to be precise.
$2 billion. And the year before?
Year before was about 6 million bags and just over $1 billion. So they almost doubled their revenue year on year.
So, okay, that's exponential growth. How did Uganda pull this off? What were the key things they did right?
That's the multi-billion-dollar question, isn't it? And it's not just one thing. It's really a mix of very deliberate, coordinated efforts.
Okay.
So first, you absolutely have to point to the government-led focus on quality and productivity. You've got the Ministry of Agriculture, MAAIF, and the Uganda Coffee Development Authority, the UCDA. They've really, really pushed hard on farmer training.
Practical stuff on the ground.
Exactly. Training, strict quality control right from the farm, making sure farmers can get the inputs they need. This is all baked into their big national strategy, the Coffee Roadmap they launched in 2017.
And did it work for the farmers?
It seems so. The result we're seeing is consistently higher grade coffee coming out of Uganda. And crucially, farmers actually got the highest prices for their coffee in 30 years in the last financial year, FY 2324.
Okay, so better quality, better prices. That's a strong foundation. What else?
Second, record harvests. You can't ignore that. They had some good weather, yes, but they also expanded the areas under cultivation.
So more land producing coffee.
More land and better yields from existing land, too. Like July 2024 exports, a historic high. Over 820,000 bags in that single month, bringing in over $210 million.
Wow.
But it's not just luck with the weather or planting more. They've invested smartly in research, too. Things like developing disease-resistant coffee clones. That helps keep production up, even when, the climate throws curveballs.
Right, building that resilience in.
Yeah.
Smart. Okay, so you've got quality up, quantity up.
Yeah.
But you need buyers.
You absolutely do. Which brings us to the third point, aggressive export promotion and getting market access. Uganda has been super proactive here, sending dozens of Ugandan companies to major global events like the World of Coffee trade show in Geneva just recently, mid-2025. They've also cleverly used things like EU-funded projects, this EU-EC markup initiative, for example.
What does that do?
It specifically helps smaller businesses add value, maybe starting some basic processing, and helps them access international markets. So this push outward, plus better logistics in their supply chain, it's open doors.
Any key markets stand out?
Italy is now their top buyer, takes almost 40% of their exports, and Europe overall, a huge 67%.
2/3 going to Europe. Okay, so government support, bigger harvests, finding buyers. Is there a fourth piece, something looking ahead?
Yes, definitely. The fourth pillar is strategic investments, and this is really focused on value addition.
Meaning doing more than just exporting raw beans.
Precisely. The government's actively investing in building instant coffee factories, roasting facilities right there in Uganda. The whole idea is to capture more of that final price rather than letting it all happen overseas.
Makes sense.
Their coffee roadmap, that strategy document, it sets a massive target, 20 million bags by 2030. That's up from about 8.5 million now. And they're aiming for $1.5 billion in annual revenue just from that.
20 million bags, that's ambitious.
Hugely. And it involves getting public and private money for these processing plants, but also making sure they meet new international rules, like the EU's upcoming regulations on deforestation. Got to protect that market access, especially with Europe being so important.
It sounds incredibly thorough. A real top-to-bottom strategy. Okay, let's pivot now. Let's talk Ethiopia. For so many people, Ethiopia's coffee, right?
It's a birthplace, absolutely.
The origin, the cultural heartland, exclusively Arabica. It's not just, cash crop there. It supports maybe 15 million people. It's part of their identity. Known for those amazing diverse flavors, winey, fruity, floral.
That heritage is immense, undeniable. And while Uganda's surged in volume, Ethiopia's sector isn't exactly shrinking. It's still very strong, still growing.
Right, they're growing too.
Oh, yeah. In their last fiscal year, 23-24, they shipped nearly 300,000 tons. That's about 5 million bags, earning them $1.43 billion. And that itself was a 20% jump in volume from the year before.
20% is still significant growth.
It is. And the current year, FY 24-25, first 9 months, they've already shipped almost 300,000 tons again, bringing in $1.5 billion. They're on track for a record year. The government's actually targeting $2 billion by June 2025.
So Ethiopia is not standing still. But given Uganda's explosive growth, are they adapting their strategy? Is it just about heritage, or are they changing things up to stay competitive?
That's a really good question. They definitely recognize the need to evolve. They've got their own national strategy called CECCSAR.
Yeah, the Coffee Export Competitiveness and Sustainability Initiative Roadmap. Bit of a mouthful. But the Ethiopian Coffee and Tea Authority, ECTA, they point to recent reforms being key to their own export gains. Things like better quality control, much better traceability now, and infrastructure improvements.
So similar themes to Uganda in some ways. Some overlaps, yes. But Ethiopia's strategy under CECSAR aims for really dramatic increases too, maybe hitting 1.26 million tons exported by 2033. That relies on better farming practices and more efficient processing.
And their markets. You said Uganda relies heavily on Europe. Ethiopia.
More diversified. Their top buyers include Saudi Arabia, Germany, the US, Belgium, China. It's a broader base.
Okay, sounds promising. A clear long-term plan.
Right.
But, no industry is without its problems. What are the main headwinds Ethiopia is facing right now?
Yeah, despite the growth, there are definite challenges. The wire economy is tough, currency depreciation, high inflation. That hits production costs hard.
Makes everything more expensive.
Exactly. Then there are the classic infrastructure issues. Roads aren't always great, transport delays, sometimes congestion at the ports. All that adds cost and time.
Logistical hurdles.
Big time. And historically, while things are starting to change a bit for specialty coffees, Ethiopia has exported mostly raw green beans. They've missed out on a lot of that value-add potential, the roasting, the instant coffee market that Uganda's now targeting.
Right, sending the value overseas.
And climate change is a big worry, too. Unpredictable rains, droughts. That's a real long-term threat, especially in their key growing areas like Sidama and Guji.
So economic pressures, logistics, value-add gap, climate risks. Quite a list.
It is. But on the plus side, they have this incredibly strong domestic market. Ethiopians drink a lot of their own coffee. About half their production stays in the country.
That must provide some stability.
It does. And that rich heritage, it creates opportunities, too. Think expanding specialty coffee shops, attracting investment for local roasting operations. There's still huge potential there.
Okay, so it seems both countries are pushing hard for growth.
Yeah.
But it's also bumping up against some similar issues, aren't they? And maybe similar opportunities, too.
Absolutely. If you zoom out, you see a lot of common ground. First, climate and environment. This is huge for both.
How so, specifically?
Well, Uganda's looking at risks of more heat, more erratic rain. Ethiopia, as we said, battling droughts more often. So investing in climate-resilient farming, better irrigation, water management, maybe different shade techniques. It's not optional. It's critical for both.
And those new EU rules you mentioned.
Exactly. The deforestation-free regulations. Both countries need rock-solid traceability systems to prove their coffee isn't coming from recently cleared forests. Uganda seems to be actively building these systems. Ethiopia needs to make sure its smallholders, who produce most of the coffee, can meet those standards too.
So adapting farming, meeting global standards, big shared challenges. What else?
Pests and diseases. Always a risk in agriculture. Uganda's fought coffee wilt disease for years, and they manage pests like the coffee borer. So continued research into resistant plants, ongoing farmer training. That's vital.
And Ethiopia.
Their traditional shade-grown systems have maybe helped buffer them a bit, but climate stress could make crops more vulnerable. They might need new approaches too.
Okay. Then there's the market reliance issue.
Yeah, market concentration. Uganda, we said 67% Europe. That's a risk if EU policy changes or the euro weakens. So diversifying, pushing into Asia, the Americas, even other African countries, that's a big strategic opportunity for them.
And Ethiopia, despite being more diversified.
They can still expand further. Those growing middle classes in Asia and across Africa, huge potential markets for Ethiopia and Arabica.
Makes sense. And the value addition piece you mentioned for both.
Huge shared opportunity, value addition. Uganda's already investing in instant and roasted. Ethiopia's debated boosting domestic roasting for ages, and recent policy changes might finally unlock that. Imagine the impact if more Ethiopian coffee was roasted in Ethiopia.
More income staying locally.
Exactly. And it's not just roasting. Developing local packaging, branding, certification services, all of that keeps more money within the country.
Right. And the basics. Moving the coffee, financing the trade.
Still critical. Infrastructure and finance. Better roads, smoother port operations, reduce costs for everyone. And access to credit, stable foreign exchange. These are perennial needs for exporters.
You said Ethiopia is working on Forex access.
They have been, trying to ease bottlenecks for exporters. Uganda's currency is relatively stable, which helps, but they still face their own tax and fee challenges in the export process.
Okay. One last shared area, drinking the coffee at home?
Yes. Domestic consumption. It's like an insurance policy against volatile export markets. Ethiopia, as we said, has this amazing coffee culture. They drink about 500,000 bags themselves. That's steady demand.
And Uganda.
Consumption per person is lower, so there's an opportunity there. Promote a local coffee culture, maybe through cafes, maybe promoting local instant brands. It could really support prices and the whole industry from the ground up.
So yeah, fascinating how they're navigating such similar paths in many ways, despite their different starting points and coffee types, facing the same climate realities, same market pressures, same need for investment. So let's bring it all together. What does this shift, Uganda rising, Ethiopia adapting, mean for the bigger picture? Regionally, globally. Uganda taking that top exporter spot isn't just a statistic, is it? It feels like it's actually reshuffling the African coffee map.
It really is a profound shift. Think about it. For decades, Ethiopia was the name in African coffee exporting, both value and volume, thanks to that unique Arabica. Now, Uganda, already a Robusta giant globally, only behind Vietnam and Brazil, takes the volume crown for Africa.
So it shows Africa's coffee power isn't just in one place anymore.
Precisely. It signals a clear diversification. And continentally, Uganda's success really highlights East Africa's growing weight in the global coffee supply. You add Ethiopia, Kenya, Tanzania. The region is a major force, especially for Arabica, but now increasingly for Robusta too.
Could Uganda's success attract more investment to the region generally?
Very likely. You might see more financing flowing towards things like improving drying mills, getting farms certified, not just in Uganda, but maybe neighbors see the potential too. Success breeds attention.
And globally. How does this play out in the wider market?
Well, the extra Robusta from Uganda could maybe slightly ease the tightness we've seen in the Robusta market lately. Prices have been high, partly because of weather issues in Asia, like Vietnam. So more Ugandan Robusta is welcome news for buyers.
And Ethiopia's impact.
They're premium Arabicas. They continue to command high prices and support the higher end of the market. Actually, high global coffee prices recently have been pretty good for African exporters overall, partly driven by worries about harvests in Brazil and Central America.
Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting for you listening. This whole new dynamic, it's going to influence coffee buyers, roasters all over the world. Importers now have to see Uganda not just as an origin, but as a leading, high-volume, potentially high-quality supplier.
A Ugandan trade official pointed out recently that over half the world's green coffee trade flows through Geneva. So Uganda making a big splash, it shows there. That's strategically really important.
And for Africa itself, more exports mean
More foreign currency coming in, which is vital. and crucially, potential for more rural development, better incomes for those millions of farming families.
So what could this mean practically for the coffee drinker? What might they see differently?
Well, you might genuinely start seeing more coffees labeled Ugandan origin, maybe even single origin Ugandan espresso. You might encounter Cup of Excellence winners from Uganda. These are coffees that score incredibly high in blind tastings, proving exceptional quality.
Like finding Ethiopian Yirgacheffe or Sidamo.
Exactly. Ugandan coffees, potentially innovative blends featuring Ugandan beans, could become just as recognizable and sought after. This isn't just a temporary blip, it's reshaping trade patterns, influencing prices, and ultimately broadening the choices available to you for years to come.
What an absolutely incredible deep dive. We've really seen how Uganda has, well, strategically planned and executed its way to becoming Africa's top coffee exporter by volume.
Yeah, driven by those government programs, the record harvest, really smart market promotion.
And we've also looked at Ethiopia's continuing strength. The powerhouse origin of Arabica, but also the real challenges it's navigating in this changing world.
With its own reforms ongoing, and crucially, that big opportunity still waiting in value addition.
It's clear both countries, though, they're so different in many ways, but both are absolutely pivotal to the future of coffee globally. And this story, their sort of friendly rivalry, maybe, their shared drive for excellence, it's not just about export data.
No, it's about millions of livelihoods. And it's literally changing the taste of coffee for people all around the world.
It really makes you think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
As these two giants keep innovating, keep growing, pushing each other, what happens next? Will we see more collaboration across East Africa's coffee belt, making the region even stronger globally?
Or will that competitive spirit push them into even more specialized, distinct niches in the market? Uganda dominating Robusta, Ethiopia doubling down on premium Arabica.
Something to brew on, indeed. Well, thank you for joining us for this deep dive into East African coffee. We really hope it's given you a fresh look at the complex, fascinating world behind that daily cup.